the family, they just have a lot of family drama. I don't know. It's like a cursed family or something. I hate to say that, but like it's just a lot of stuff happens in that family.
Blake Lively's picture-perfect image has been shattered, exposing a side of her that no one saw coming. The actress, long admired for her grace and charm, has been accused of being so ruthless that even her own family has reportedly cut ties. And the fallout? A Hollywood-level disaster. Lively is scrambling to control the damage, but the whispers are growing louder, and the cracks in her reputation are impossible to ignore. This isn't just a minor misstep. This is a full-blown scandal. For years, she played the role of America's sweetheart. She had it all: flawless red carpet looks, a golden reputation in the industry, and a seemingly perfect marriage with Ryan Reynolds that made them Hollywood's ultimate power couple.
Anna, what does it mean to be working with Blake again?
Oh, we're talking about you all day.
Add to that the lucrative brand deals, constant magazine features, and friendships with A-list stars that kept her in the spotlight. On the surface, she was untouchable. But Hollywood is a battlefield, and no one stays on top without stepping on a few toes. Now, the perfect illusion has been shattered, and it's all tied to a shocking feud involving none other than filmmaker and actor Justin Baldoni.
This is some family drama. You don't do this. You don't do this in front of the scenes. This is not right, okay?
The drama brewing behind the scenes is enough to make even the most seasoned insiders do a double take. So, what really went down? Buckle up, because the truth is messier than anyone could have imagined. But this isn't just about Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni. His family, led by his father, Sam Baldoni, has also been pulled into the firestorm. What started as a quiet legal dispute has exploded into an all-out Hollywood showdown, laying bare the ugly side of an industry built on power plays and backroom deals. And at the center of it all, a star who may have just pushed her luck too far. At first, few people realized how deep the tension ran between Lively and Baldoni.
We appeared to have all this money, or we appeared to be rich.
It's painful. It is painful.
Insiders whispered about behind-the-scenes clashes during a high-profile project they were both involved in. Creative disagreements are common in Hollywood, but this was something else. Sources claim Blake wasn't just giving notes, she was making demands. Word spread that she wanted major script changes, allegedly insisting that her vision take precedence. Meanwhile, Baldoni, known for his calm and collected demeanor, reportedly tried to stand his ground, determined to preserve his directorial control.
And so despite all of the resentment, to me, at the end of the day, that's what it means to be me.
What started as hushed friction on set soon became an open secret in industry circles. The press caught wind of it, and suddenly Lively was being painted as controlling and relentless, while Baldoni was said to be quietly simmering under the weight of her interference. Then came the bombshell. Legal documents surfaced, and the scandal took a whole new turn. Lively dropped a shocking accusation, claiming inappropriate behavior on Baldoni's part. His camp immediately fired back, accusing Blake of using underhanded tactics to push him out of his own project.
We're women, so we can just lie and cheat and steal our way in to control these big movies. I mean, how disturbing is this to you?
Now, the gloves are off and the industry is divided. Was this a power move gone wrong? Or is there something even darker at play? One thing's for sure, this battle is far from over. The media wasted no time sinking their teeth into the scandal, desperate for every juicy detail. Tabloids ran wild with claims that Blake Lively wasn't just disagreeing with Justin Baldoni. She was allegedly orchestrating a full-blown takeover.
We never talked about it. I was suffering. We never talked about anything. You're my dad, and I was having resentment for all the stuff we don't talk about.
Rumors swirled that she was pushing to replace producers, swap out directors, and even demand a rewrite of the entire script. And the worst part? If the whispers were true, Baldoni, the very person who had nurtured the project from the ground up, was being pushed aside like an afterthought. At first, fans shrugged it off as typical Hollywood drama. Power struggles happen all the time in the industry, right? But what they didn't realize was that a storm was brewing, one that would soon blow the lid off everything.
is what you're doing right now. You were nervous. You texted me last night. You came here. You knew it wasn't going to be easy. We're going to talk about stuff. And you showed up anyways. And you listened.
Then came the moment that sent shockwaves through the entire saga. Out of nowhere, Justin's father, Sam Baldoni, who had been unknown to most fans, stepped into the fray, and he wasn't holding back. Hollywood parents usually stay in the background, but not this time. Sam had seen enough, and when he realized the narrative was starting to favor Lively, he decided to take matters into his own hands. But instead of a dramatic press conference or a generic public statement, he chose a modern battlefield, social media. And what he did next was nothing short of a masterstroke. Sam's video was simple yet brutal in its impact. No rants, no accusations, just a bulletin board covered in words that describe Justin's character: compassionate, focused, respectful, generous, a father's quiet yet powerful endorsement. But the real stinger? The caption that had everyone talking. In a world full of Blakes and Ryans, be a Justin. Mic dropped. Sam Baldoni never had to say their names outright. His message was razor sharp and impossible to misinterpret. In just a few words, he sent a direct shot at Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds, cloaked in just enough ambiguity to set the internet on fire. And fire it did.
I'm a huge fan of you.
Oh.
Your movies are so inspiring. If everyone can tag Justin Baldoni to his video, it would mean the world to me. I have been trying to reach out to you for the longest. I have everything of you.
Within hours, his short but lethal post went viral, igniting a frenzy across social media. TikTok feeds were flooded with analysis, Twitter was ablaze with theories, and the comment sections became battlegrounds of debate. Some defended Lively, but many others began questioning everything they thought they knew about Hollywood's so-called golden couple.
Everyone's seeing through it. They're seeing through the BS. And, you know, at the end of the day, they're the ones who are seeking gag orders against Baldoni from releasing information.
For Blake, this was an unexpected disaster. She and Ryan had spent years carefully crafting their brand, charming, relatable, effortlessly perfect. Fans adored their witty social media exchanges, their glamorous charity appearances, and the rock-solid image they had built in an industry where power couples rarely last. They weren't just admired, they were idolized. But Sam's pointed jab cracked that polished facade in an instant. Even without outright naming them, his post shattered the illusion that Blake and Ryan were untouchable. It left the public wondering, was Blake truly a victim?
Co-star Justin Baldoni calling it outrageously insulting and playing into every sexist trope. The illustration depicts Lively using a slingshot to fire a cell phone at Baldoni.
In this feud, or was there something far more calculated at play? And just like that, a workplace dispute between two Hollywood figures spiraled into something way bigger. What started as quiet whispers between industry insiders turned into an all-out war, pulling major studios, streaming giants, and some of the most powerful players in entertainment into the chaos. The lines were drawn, and there was no turning back. This wasn't just a scandal, it was a reckoning. Hollywood isn't just an industry, it's a tight-knit web where power, influence, and reputation dictate everything. Directors, actors, producers, and executives all run in the same circles. And when a scandal explodes, there's no escaping the fallout.
A spokesperson for Lively condemned the magazine, saying the Hollywood Reporter should be ashamed of itself and criticizing its article for downplaying documented examples of sexual harassment and retaliation as cultural misunderstanding.
And after Sam Baldoni's post went viral, it felt like the entire industry was holding its breath. Some choosing sides, others waiting to see who would emerge victorious. Would Blake Lively weather the storm, or was this the beginning of her downfall? At first, she stuck to the script, keeping up her carefully crafted persona. Her Instagram remained flooded with polished snapshots, pictures of her picture-perfect family, stunning designer looks, and peeks into her latest business ventures. But there was just one problem. People weren't buying it anymore. Sam's words had hit, and they hit hard. The comment sections of her posts turned into battlegrounds, with users calling her out, demanding answers, and accusing her of dodging the growing allegations.
It's part of being in the public eye. She's just used to being Hollywood's golden girl, and she had such thin skin that after having a couple negative things happen to her for a month, she had to blame him. She decided to blame him, and boy, did she open up a hornet's nest and learn, be careful what you wish for, because now you've got the fight you asked for, and you're not.
At the end of the day, they're the ones who are seeking gag orders against Baldoni from releasing information, whereas his team is saying, nope, let's put out everything. Every single text message.
Every attempt to keep up the illusion was met with skepticism, and her once loyal followers weren't afraid to question her authenticity. Her PR team worked overtime to put out the fire, but the damage was already done. A single father's social media post had spun out of control, growing into something no one could contain. And just when it seemed like Blake was starting to regroup, Hollywood dropped the hammer.
They're just highlighting, this is a mean girl. This isn't a good person.
The Hollywood Reporter, one of the most respected publications in the entertainment world, released its February 21st issue, and it was nothing short of brutal. The cover, a sharp-edged cartoon of Blake Lively herself launching a phone via slingshot directly at Justin Baldoni. If there was ever a sign that this scandal had officially taken over Hollywood, this was it.
So essentially, every single thing that she's claimed against him has been disproved.
The Hollywood Reporter's cover wasn't just a cheeky illustration. It was a direct jab at Blake Lively's legal strategy, specifically her team's aggressive push to subpoena Justin Baldoni's text messages. And that's when the industry insiders really took notice. Normally, A-list stars have an invisible shield around them. Top-tier media outlets rarely take direct shots at Hollywood royalty, but if the Hollywood Reporter was bold enough to mock Lively so publicly, it meant something deeper was at play. The power brokers behind the scenes either no longer cared about protecting her image, or worse,
She helped for the screening. She made him and his whole family go down to the basement.
Go down to the basement during the premiere of his movie.
they were actively turning against her. That's when Blake officially went into full-blown damage control. She blasted the magazine for what she called an outrageous and insulting depiction, accusing them of downplaying serious allegations of SH. In Hollywood, a counterattack like this is usually enough to shift the narrative. Top celebrities have well-oiled PR machines, armies of strategists, and carefully crafted statements designed to win back public sympathy.
Because Blake Lively had alienated the entire cast against him. She had convinced everyone that he was this monster, this terrible person.
But this time, it didn't work. Instead of rallying behind her, the public met her outrage with a collective shrug. The tide had already turned, and people weren't so quick to take her side anymore. Instead of unquestioning support, comment sections and discussion boards were filled with skepticism. The once loyal fan base that had adored her carefully curated image was now openly questioning her motives. It was as if the court of public opinion had already made up its mind. Her credibility wasn't as unshakable as it once was, and people were finally willing to ask, was there more to the story than she was letting on?
She could wield all creative control of the movie and end up getting her final cut of the movie, not Justin Baldoni's. And in the end, that's exactly what happened. He didn't even get to see the final cut of it.
At the heart of the growing skepticism, a glaring mismatch between Blake Lively's allegations against Justin Baldoni and the hard evidence that kept surfacing to contradict her claims. Every day, new details emerge, screenshots behind-the-scenes accounts, text messages, and with each revelation, her story developed more holes. By the time the Hollywood Reporter took its shot, it wasn't just a bold move. It was the final nail in the coffin for Lively's once pristine reputation. The industry had seen enough, and so had the public. The image of America's sweetheart was slipping away, and no amount of PR damage control seemed to be stopping the downward spiral. That's when social media detectives, arguably one of the most relentless forces in the digital age, stepped in. TikTokers, Twitter users, and internet sleuths started combing through everything, Old interviews, past behind-the-scenes footage, even past collaborations to look for inconsistencies in her claims. And then they found something explosive.
Like, I'm so sorry. Like, I know this is your project. I'm sorry we can't show you anything. I mean, for him as well, he instantly had he had an award for advocating for women, something in the realm of feminism.
One particular revelation sent shockwaves through Twitter. Lively had reportedly claimed that Justin Baldoni had violated her privacy while she was breastfeeding, an accusation that, if true, would have been a serious invasion of personal boundaries. The claim immediately fueled outrage, with many siding with her. But then, Baldoni's team fired back with damning receipts, text messages that completely flipped the narrative. The leaked texts showed that Blake herself had invited Justin into the room to rehearse lines, explicitly mentioning that she was breastfeeding, but insisting it wasn't an issue.
I mean, now other footage is coming out of Blake Lively admitting, hey, when I get involved with projects, they hire me as the actress, and sometimes I don't really tell them, but I actually want to come in and I want to rewrite it.
When those messages went public, everything changed. The outrage that had initially been directed at Baldoni boomeranged right back at Blake. Many of her supporters felt betrayed. They had defended her, believing something serious had happened, only to be faced with evidence suggesting that she might have made it all up. And in the age of viral callouts and digital takedowns, public trust is fragile. One misstep, one inconsistency, and years of credibility can vanish overnight. The public wanted answers. If Blake Lively had explicitly invited Justin Baldoni into the room, why had she painted him as some kind of predator walking in unannounced? The inconsistency wasn't just troubling, it completely shattered the credibility of her claims. With this revelation, the foundation of Lively's entire lawsuit started to crumble. If such a serious and deeply personal accusation could be so easily dismantled with cold, hard evidence, then what else in her complaint was exaggerated? Or worse, outright fabricated?
I want to be a producer and I want to do all of these things. She's literally admitted all of this blatantly. This is just the first time that it's ended up.
How old is Blake Lively, by the way?
30s, I believe.
34.
And just like that, speculation went wild. People began questioning whether this entire fiasco had been orchestrated from the very start. Was this truly about justice, or was it an elaborate power move? A strategic attempt to take control over the final cut of the film, ensuring it aligned only with her vision? The whispers turned into full-blown debates, and each passing day brought new twists, making it harder and harder to believe Lively's side of the story. But then came the real bombshell, the claim that sent Hollywood into an uproar. Reports surfaced that Justin Baldoni himself had been barred from attending his own movie premiere. The very film he had nurtured from the beginning, the project he had poured his heart and soul into, and he wasn't even allowed to step on the red carpet.
While Baldoni counter-sued Lively and her husband Ryan Reynolds for defamation and extortion on Wednesday, Lively filed an amend law complaint stating she was not alone in raising allegation of on-set misconduct.
If true, this wasn't just a power play, it was a complete industry shakeup. The idea that Lively, allegedly backed by Ryan Reynolds, had enough clout to block the lead actor and producer from his own event was nothing short of chilling. It was a glaring display of just how much influence a Hollywood powerhouse could wield when the right people were in their corner. As the story spread through industry circles, it didn't just spark outrage, it sent a warning shot to actors, producers, and studios alike. This wasn't just about one scandal, this was about a dangerous precedent, where star power could completely rewrite professional boundaries, override rightful credits, and reshape who got to control the narrative. And that shook Hollywood to its core.
Used it as an opportunity to promote her alcohol brand, which is insane because many people know that alcoholism really fuels DV.
As the scandal continued to unravel, even more damning reports surfaced, this time suggesting that entire sections of the creative team had been pressured or manipulated by Blake Lively to actively exclude Justin Baldoni and his family from the film's premiere and promotional events. And for Sam Baldoni, that was the final straw. He knew that if they let this slide, Justin's entire career could be at risk. In an industry where perception is everything, allowing Lively to completely control the event meant erasing Justin's role in a project he had dedicated himself to from the very beginning. For Sam, this wasn't just about Hollywood politics. It was about protecting his son's livelihood from what he saw as a calculated, career-destroying power move. Suddenly, Sam's outspoken criticism of Lively, and even Ryan Reynolds, made perfect sense. This wasn't just about personal grudges. It was about defending Justin's future against what looked like an orchestrated attempt to shut him out of his own work. And in Hollywood, relationships are just as valuable as talent.
Completely tone deaf, and as a response to this, she was getting a lot of hate. In fact, people were posting old interviews of her that weren't even really relevant at all to the movie, but they're just highlighting this is a mean girl. This isn't a good person.
Agents, managers, and studio execs tend to protect marketable stars at all costs, but they also know when to jump ship. No one wants to be tied to an actor whose name is dragging through the mud. If a star becomes too toxic, aligning with them can be a death sentence for anyone hoping to stay in the game. So when The Hollywood Reporter took that brutal public jab at Lively's lawsuit, the message was loud and clear. Blake Lively was no longer untouchable. Behind closed doors, industry power players started reevaluating their stance. Casting directors, once eager to attach her name to projects, were now hesitant. Studio execs whispered over power lunches, weighing whether keeping her on their rosters was worth the risk. Hollywood thrives on influence, but it also moves on fast when the tide turns. And in Lively's case, that tide was turning faster than anyone expected. For a while, Blake Lively's star power had been enough to shield her from serious consequences. But now, even Hollywood's most powerful players were starting to distance themselves. Producers who had quietly rolled their eyes at her alleged behind-the-scenes meddling finally had a legitimate reason to pass her over. No more whispering, no more playing nice. Now they could openly avoid working with her without fearing backlash. Even SAG-AFTRA, which had initially leaned toward supporting her, especially given the nature of her accusations, seemed to be pulling back. The moment it became clear that Lively's claims weren't holding up as strongly as expected, the industry's silence spoke volumes. And for her most loyal fans, the sudden desertion felt like a betrayal. But for Hollywood insiders, this was business as usual. The entertainment industry has never been known for loyalty. A-listers are protected until they become a liability. And the moment someone is seen as too risky, they're dropped without a second thought. Lively's biggest miscalculation? Thinking that her star power alone would guarantee unwavering support, no matter how questionable her claims became. But what really sent the internet into a frenzy was one of the most bizarre leaks yet. A wild claim that Blake had compared herself to none other than Daenerys Targaryen from Game of Thrones. According to the leaked info, she had boldly referred to Ryan Reynolds and Taylor Swift as her dragons, a declaration that instantly set off waves of amusement, disbelief, and secondhand embarrassment across social media. The idea that Lively saw herself as some kind of regal, untouchable queen, commanding one of the biggest pop stars on the planet and a beloved Hollywood actor as her personal defenders, was just too much for many to take seriously. What was meant to be an empowering statement backfired spectacularly. Instead of intimidation, it sparked endless mockery, turning her into the butt of the joke rather than the powerful figure she imagined herself to be. And in an industry where perception is everything, that was perhaps her biggest mistake yet. One of the most telling signs that Blake Lively was losing control of the narrative? Taylor Swift's silence. Lively might have thought that name-dropping Swift as one of her dragons would summon millions of devoted Swifties to her defense, but that gamble failed spectacularly. Swift, a master of PR and social media strategy, never inserted herself into the drama. And that spoke volumes. Swift is calculated. She only engages in public controversies when they directly impact her brand or personal experiences. She doesn't move unless she decides the battle is worth fighting. And this time, she sat it out completely. Then there was Ryan Reynolds. For someone constantly engaging with the public through witty banter and social media antics, his radio silence was deafening. He made no grand statements defending his wife, no public attacks on Justin Baldoni, no attempts to steer the media storm in Lively's favor. The people she had counted on to stand beside her were nowhere to be found when it mattered most. And that silence It said everything. While the professional fallout was obvious, lost roles, brutal headlines, and whispers of possible blacklisting, the personal toll on Lively was just as visible. Paparazzi photos captured a completely different version of her. Gone was the radiant, effortlessly confident red carpet queen. Instead, she looked tense, anxious, and visibly strained. Behind closed doors, she was said to be working overtime with her PR handlers, desperately trying to spin new angles on the story or redirect public attention to her charitable work and personal ventures. But no matter how hard she tried to pivot the conversation, the internet refused to let her off the hook. Every new attempt to shift the narrative was immediately dragged right back into the storm of controversies she had set into motion herself. And in a digital age where public opinion can make or break a celebrity overnight, Blake Lively was discovering the hard way that once the internet turns on you, there's no easy escape. Behind closed doors, sources, allegedly from Blake Lively's own inner circle, painted a picture of a deeply frustrated and exhausted star. No matter how hard she tried to regain control of the situation, the narrative kept slipping further out of her grasp. What hit her the hardest? The sheer speed at which the public embraced Justin Baldoni's side of the story. She reportedly never imagined that someone with far less name recognition could completely shift public perception, especially against an A-lister like her who had long been accustomed to glowing media coverage and unwavering support. The feeling of betrayal stung, and the relentless onslaught of social media only made things worse. TikTok detectives went to work, breaking down every single one of her statements with surgical precision. Every interview, every post, every word was analyzed and scrutinized, fueling more doubt about her version of events. Meanwhile, Justin Baldoni played the long game. Unlike his father, Sam Baldoni, who didn't hold back when firing direct shots at Lively and her camp, Justin kept his approach measured and calculated. Instead of fueling the fire, he let the evidence and his father's perfectly timed social media jabs do the talking. Some critics tried to spin his silence as guilt, but it quickly became clear that this was a deliberate strategy. After all, if you have the truth and the receipts, there's no need for theatrics. Instead of grandstanding or making emotional appeals, Baldoni quietly released evidence to counter specific allegations, especially the most explosive ones, like the breastfeeding invasion claim and the accusation that he had made negative comments about Lively's postpartum body. His calm, restrained approach only strengthened his credibility, while Lively's increasingly desperate attempts to shift the conversation kept backfiring. And in Hollywood, perception is everything. Each time Justin Baldoni responded, he came armed with hard evidence, text messages, corroborating statements, and receipts that directly challenged Blake Lively's claims. And each time, her credibility took another hit. What Lively had presented as serious misconduct, even as grounds for a legal battle, was increasingly looking like normal, professional exchanges that had been taken wildly out of context. But this case wasn't just about two Hollywood figures locked in a dispute. It was happening against the backdrop of a larger cultural shift, one shaped by the Me Too movement, which had forced Hollywood to confront real cases of misconduct, abuse, and power imbalances. At the beginning, many people were inclined to side with Lively. Why? Because history has shown that powerful men have taken advantage of their positions. And the idea of an actress speaking out against a well-known director fit into an all-too-familiar pattern. But as the contradictions piled up, something shifted. The more evidence that surfaced, the harder it became to frame this situation as a classic case of power abuse. Instead, cultural commentators, journalists, and even Hollywood insiders began to voice concerns. What happens when someone weaponizes a movement meant to protect real victims? Could cases like this make it harder for genuine survivors to be believed? Suddenly, Lively's downfall wasn't just a Hollywood scandal, it was becoming a cautionary tale. This wasn't just about her career anymore. If her accusations weren't genuine, the broader implications were far more damaging, potentially making future claims of misconduct harder to trust. And then came the game-changing moment. In a legal bombshell, Justin's legal team successfully unsealed a flood of text messages during the discovery phase. These weren't just selective screenshots. They were countless, unfiltered exchanges between him and Lively. And what did they reveal? Mundane, professional, and even friendly interactions that directly contradicted some of the most shocking allegations she had made. In an instant, the entire scandal took on a new light. Had Blake Lively overplayed her hand? The leaked text messages painted a very different picture from the one Blake Lively had presented in her legal claims. Discussions about shooting schedules, creative notes, casual jokes about life on set, everything pointed to a cordial, even friendly working relationship. In some messages, Lively was complimentary toward Justin Baldoni, praising his ideas and seeking his input on creative decisions. At times, her tone even appeared flirtatious. This starkly contradicted the legal narrative she had built, where Baldoni was framed as a menacing figure who had disregarded her boundaries as a new mother. Instead of a hostile work environment, the messages suggested mutual collaboration. With her PR machine losing control, rumors of Lively being shut out of future projects began to gain momentum. Hollywood rarely declares a formal blacklist, but when someone falls out of favor, the consequences are unmistakable. Fewer calls from casting directors, a sharp decline in invitations to major industry events, and sponsorships that quietly disappear. The irony? Lively set out to torpedo Justin Baldoni's career, but it was her own prospects that seemed to be unraveling. Meanwhile, Justin's name was rising. Industry insiders took notice of how he handled the controversy, with restraint, confidence, and a reliance on facts rather than theatrics. Instead of being blacklisted, he was suddenly getting supportive messages from colleagues and new offers from producers, intrigued by his story and impressed by his composure throughout the ordeal. For a while, Lively's team desperately tried to pivot. They pushed new film projects, charity work, and philanthropic ventures, hoping to bury the controversy in a wave of fresh headlines. But the internet wasn't having it. Every new social media post was flooded with comments about the scandal, bringing everything back to square one. No matter how hard her team tried to shift the conversation, the backlash followed her every move. Then came another complication: Ryan Reynolds. Fans closely monitored his response, expecting him to publicly support his wife. But the silence was unmistakable. Despite being known for his quick-witted social media presence, Reynolds made no grand statements, no emotional defenses, no public attacks on Baldoni. And in Hollywood, silence can sometimes be the loudest statement of all. Ryan Reynolds kept his distance, at least publicly. He continued cracking jokes on Twitter, promoting his own projects, and appearing at events, but rarely alongside Blake. While some saw this as a sign of domestic tension, others believed it was a calculated move. Reynolds is a brand unto himself, and getting too entangled in a spiraling PR disaster could cost him dearly. Whether it was personal strain or professional savvy, one thing was clear: he wasn't stepping into the fire. But the real surprise in this saga, Justin Baldoni's rise to household name status. Before this controversy, he was recognizable, but mostly to fans of Jane the Virgin or those familiar with his work behind the camera. He wasn't exactly an A-lister, but now his name was everywhere. People who had never heard of him before were suddenly invested in his story. Directors, journalists, and producers started reaching out, curious about his availability and impressed by his composure throughout the ordeal. A new narrative had formed around him. The level-headed professional, the man who had gracefully endured a high-profile smear attempt without resorting to theatrics. The controversy that was supposed to take him down had, instead, propelled him into the spotlight. In Hollywood, visibility is currency. And sometimes, all it takes is one massive scandal to put a talented individual on the map. What was supposed to be a career-ending moment for Baldoni had, instead, amplified his influence. Suddenly, he wasn't just a respected filmmaker. He was a survivor of a public takedown attempt, a figure who had weathered the storm with dignity. Of course, whether he fully capitalizes on this newfound attention depends entirely on his next moves. If he continues to handle things with the same level of restraint, he could transform what started as a PR disaster into a stepping stone toward far more significant opportunities. Hollywood history is filled with stars who have tried to control the narrative by weaponizing public sympathy, but sometimes The story writes itself. Some Hollywood figures manage to control the narrative, at least for a while. As long as they have box office traction and industry backing, even the most questionable stories can hold up temporarily. But once hard evidence contradicts their claims, the backlash is swift and unforgiving. Studios, producers, and even diehard fans don't take kindly to feeling misled. And in an industry where every new project is a high-stakes investment, no director or producer wants to invite unnecessary drama onto their set. At first, Lively's allegations had the potential to end Justin Baldoni's career. If he hadn't had the receipts, the witnesses, and the unsealed text messages to back him up, he could have been permanently ostracized. The industry has seen countless cases where accusations alone were enough to derail someone's future. But the landscape has shifted. Ironically, the very transparency that Lively initially demanded is now working against her. With the full picture out in the open, the narrative has flipped, and Baldoni is the one emerging stronger than ever. While Lively fights to regain footing, Baldoni's career is thriving. Producers, talk show hosts, and film executives are suddenly taking a fresh look at him. He's no longer just a respected filmmaker, he's now a compelling figure. Someone who survived a high-profile personal attack and came out of it gracefully and unscathed. And in Hollywood, that kind of resilience is worth its weight in gold. The sympathy factor alone might open new doors, leading roles, expanded production deals, and even bigger budgets for his future projects. Overnight, he's gone from an industry underdog to a name everyone is talking about. But through it all, one figure has remained constant: Sam Baldoni. His single social media post set off a chain reaction that unraveled a web of half-truths and manipulations. In an industry built on image and illusion, he stood out as an unwavering force of familial loyalty. It's rare for a parent to step into the Hollywood battlefield, but when Sam did, he didn't just defend his son, he changed the course of an entire scandal. At the end of the day, this entire saga serves as a brutal reality check behind the glitzy premieres, polished interviews, and carefully curated social media posts. Hollywood is a battlefield of power plays, alliances, and shifting loyalties. Blake Lively's fall from grace, whether orchestrated, self-inflicted, or a mix of both, proves that even the most A-list celebrities are not immune to the court of public opinion once the receipts start dropping. And for those watching from home, this scandal is a reminder of just how fast grand facades can crumble the moment raw, unfiltered truths hit the surface. But this story isn't over yet. As legal battles continue to unfold, fans and insiders alike are waiting for the next bombshell. Will there be more leaked texts, new witness statements, even further revelations about how far Lively went to control the narrative? One thing is crystal clear. This controversy has permanently rewritten Blake Lively's once flawless public image. Can she craft a redemption arc strong enough to win back Hollywood's trust? Or is she facing a long-term exile from the industry she once dominated? Only time will tell. But for now, the Baldoni family stands as the undeniable winners of this battle. Their tight-knit loyalty, calculated responses, and undeniable receipts have proven that even in an industry driven by star power, cold, hard facts still have the final say. And if you've made it this far, you already know that stories like this are only going to get wilder. So don't miss out. Hit that subscribe button, smash that like, drop a comment below, and share this video with someone who needs to hear the truth. This story is far from over, and you know you'll want to be here for the next explosive update. See you in the next one.